Last summer at my Aunt Patricia's when odd shadows kept following me. I spent last summer at my Aunt Patricia's farmhouse. I was 24 and my internship didn't pay much. I thought staying there would save money. I had always loved Aunt Patricia, but I didn't like the farmhouse. It felt different this time. The house was old, filled with dusty furniture that smelled musty. I had visited as a child, but now it felt haunting. I unpacked my things on the first night. It was peaceful, but a knot formed in my stomach. The wind rustled through the fields. The house creaked. I tried to push the feeling away. The second night, something changed. I sat in the living room working, and I noticed shadows flickering outside the window. They danced in the moonlight, but moved strangely. I stood up and walked to the window. I didn't see anything but the tall trees swaying in the wind. I figured it was just my imagination, playing tricks on me because I felt so lonely. As the week passed, the shadows grew more menacing. They shifted at odd angles, like they had purpose. I tried not to let them bother me, but every night they seemed bolder. One evening, while dusting the floor, I spotted strange patterns left behind. My heart raced. I felt watched, even though I was alone. Hoping a trip into town would help, I spent the day exploring. The locals were friendly, but I sensed whispers whenever I mentioned the farmhouse. They told unsettling stories about the land, secrets hidden long ago. Maybe that was why the shadows were growing stronger, I told myself. Returning home, the whispers seemed louder. They echoed in the halls, almost real. I didn't know if they were a figment of my imagination or not, but it felt like something was always watching. Sometimes I thought I heard my name. I would spin around, but no one would be there. Each night, the shadows almost took shape. I could almost make out faces in them. I felt a sense of dread. I felt torn between confronting these shadows or just running away. Then one night, everything changed. I was too scared to sleep. I sat in a chair, staring out the window, waiting. My heart pounded in my chest. I turned toward the door. In the dim light, I saw a figure move. My breath caught in my throat. "Why are you here?" it asked. I felt frozen. I turned to look around. There was no one behind me. The chill settled deeper in my bones. I wanted to scream, but held it inside. The shadows were not just shadows anymore. They were something more, and they wanted to know why I had come. Chapter 2: The Unearthing of Secrets. I could hardly sleep that night. The question hung in the air like smoke, dense and suffocating. Why are you here? It played on repeat. In my mind, I wanted answers, but dread gnawed at me. Who had spoken? The next morning, the sun rose, but it did little to dispel the heaviness of the house. I decided I needed a distraction, so I grabbed an old notebook and ventured out to the fields. The flowers swayed gently, and I tried to focus on writing about my summer plans, but my thoughts were elsewhere. As I scribbled, I noticed something glinting in the soil nearby. Curiosity pulled me over. I dug it out with my fingers. It was an old locket, tarnished but still beautiful. I flipped it open, and my breath hitched when I saw two faces inside. Strangers, but they felt oddly familiar. I couldn't shake the sensation that I had seen them before. I placed the locket in my pocket and decided to visit my aunt, hoping she would recognize it. "Aunt Patricia," I called as I stepped back into the house. She emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's on your mind?" she asked, sensing something was off. "I found this in the fields," I said, holding the locket up for her to see. "Do you know these people?" Her face paled. "Where did you find this?" She grabbed it quickly, studying it intently. "Just outside," I replied, taken aback by her reaction. "Do you know them?" A flicker of something crossed her eyes, fear or recognition. "This belonged to your great-grandmother," she said, almost whispering. "It was, well, she was connected to the farm in ways that we never understood." "What do you mean?" I asked. She hesitated, looking down the hall. "There are stories about this land, shadows that don't belong, things that watch from the woods." The mention of shadows sent chills down my spine. I wanted to tell her everything about the voices, the figure, and the growing unease, but I also feared her reaction. Would she dismiss me? Would she be scared? Before I could speak, Aunt Patricia's eyes widened as she pointed toward the window. "Look!" I turned just in time to see something dark dart behind the tall trees. My heart raced. "Did you see that?" "Yes," she breathed. "Stay close to me. We need to be careful." The safety of her presence offered a small comfort, but I felt a rising urgency in my chest. I needed to know what was happening and what the shadows wanted from me. But finding answers would not be so simple. The day wore on, and despite my aunt's stories, the shadows outside remained just beyond my grasp. That evening, as darkness fell, I couldn't ignore the feeling that tonight might bring something dangerous. I decided to stay awake. I would confront the shadows. I needed to uncover the truth. Then, everything changed again. The wind picked up, and suddenly I felt cold, a deeper chill that sank into my bones. I looked toward the window, where the shadows began to stretch and distort, forming shapes once more. A whisper echoed in the night. "Why are you here?" I shivered. I finally understood. I was not just here for the summer. I was part of something larger, something dark, and they wanted me to know. Chapter 3. The Gathering Storm. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The shadows outside twisted and writhed in the moonlight, tugging at the edges of my vision. Each rustle of leaves felt deliberate, each wind gust carrying whispers meant only for me. I stayed close to Aunt Patricia, half wondering if she could sense it too. We settled into the living room, but my mind was racing. I wanted to ask her about the shadows, about the stories she hadn't finished. Instead, I bit my lip and watched her pick at an old quilt, her fingers trembling slightly. "Aunt Patricia," I finally managed, "what exactly happened to Great-Grandma?" She hesitated, then looked deep into my eyes. "Your great-grandmother was special, in more ways than you can imagine. She had a gift, or a curse, depending on how you look at it." "A gift? What kind of gift?" She sighed, her gaze shifting toward the window. "She could communicate with the other side. Some say she spoke with spirits. Others believed she brought shadows into this world." I let her words sink in. Spirits? Shadows? Suddenly the locket in my pocket felt heavier. "You think whatever is out there wants me to talk to it?" She paused and shook her head. "I just don't know. But there has always been a connection between our family and this land." Before I could process this, the lights flickered. My heart raced. "What was that?" "Nothing to worry about," Aunt Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The old wiring sometimes acts up." I clenched my hands into fists, my nails digging into my palms. Just then, a loud thud came from outside. It sounded like something heavy crashing against the ground. "What was that?" I whispered, my stomach twisting. "Stay here." Aunt Patricia walked toward the door, but I quickly followed her. "You shouldn't. Let me see what it is," she insisted. Together, we cautiously peered outside. The moon illuminated the edge of the woods, and I held my breath. That's when I saw it. A shadow moving between the trees, something large and dark. It paused for a moment, and I could feel its eyes on us. I wanted to step back, but I was frozen in place. "Aunt Patricia," I said, my voice shaking, What if it's trying to reach us?" "Don't say that," she replied, gripping my arm tightly. Her eyes darted toward the shadow, which had begun to creep closer, vanishing and reappearing like a wisp of smoke. Then, without warning, the darkness surged forward, seeming to leap into our yard. "We need to get inside," Aunt Patricia gasped, pulling me back by the arm. We stumbled in, slamming the door behind us. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could see fear etched into my aunt's face. "What was that?" I forced out, trying not to tremble. "I don't know," she murmured, "but we're not alone." I felt a rush of fear and adrenaline. I wanted answers, clarity, reassurance. Yet the night deepened. The air was thicker, charged with something sinister. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had come near us was tied to my great-grandmother, and to me. As we stood in the dim light of the kitchen, I caught sight of the locket in my pocket. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the cold metal. "Aunt Patricia," I said slowly, "the locket, when I found it, something was calling to me." Her eyes widened. "You may have awakened something," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought of the shadow in the woods. What does it want? The darkness outside seemed to thrum in response, and dread coiled tightly in my stomach. And then there was a knock on the door, a slow, deliberate knock that echoed through the silent house. "Who is that?" I whimpered. Aunt Patricia's expression turned grave. "I don't know, but we can't answer it." But I knew we had no choice. Something had awakened. Something wanted to be let in. Chapter 4. The Uninvited Guest. The knock came again, sharp and demanding. My breath hitched in my throat. I glanced at Aunt Patricia. Her face looked drained of color. "What do we do?" I whispered. "We stay quiet," she breathed, moving slowly away from the door. I followed her lead, pressing against the wall, heart racing wildly. The knocking intensified, each strike a sound of urgency that echoed in the stillness of the house. "Come on," a voice, raspy as dried leaves, drifted through the tiny cracks. "I know you're in there." I shuddered. It was like a winter wind, cold and unsettling. "Who is it?" I called out, my voice betraying my fear. "Let me in. I just want to talk." The voice was familiar, but not. It stirred up buried memories, vague and shadowy. I couldn't quite place it, yet something about it sent chills down my spine. Aunt Patricia shook her head, her eyes fierce. "Don't you dare open that door. It's not safe." Just then, the power flickered again. The lights dimmed, and the room was cast in shadows. We clung to each other, straining to hear past the thumping of our hearts. The voice continued, an anguished plea. "You've always known me, haven't you? Your great-grandma had the gift, and the darkness is just as connected to you." "What does that mean?" I whispered, my mind racing. Was it talking about the locket? The knocking stopped, leaving an eerie silence that pressed down on us. I glanced at the window, and that was when I noticed movement. The shadow from the woods was back, more defined now, right against the glass. It shifted, morphed, as if trying to shape itself into a form I could recognize. I gasped, pulling back instinctively. "Aunt Patricia, it's out there! It's watching us again!" "We have to go," she said, urgency lacing her words. "We need to find a way to protect ourselves." Just then, the locket in my pocket pulsed against my skin. A warmth spread through me, cutting through the fear for a moment. "What if it's trying to help?" I spoke without thinking. "Helping or harming, we don't know," Aunt Patricia said, her voice firm. "But we can't let it in." The voice outside shattered the tense air again. "You need me. You're scared, but I can help you understand." I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was a part of my family's past, a connection to my great-grandmother. What if there's truth in what it says? Aunt Patricia took a step back, her expression torn. Offering to help can be a guise. You don't know what dangers may lurk beneath those words. My pulse quickened, the two sides of me battling, fear and curiosity. The locket seemed to hum, urging me toward understanding. But was that what I really wanted? Suddenly, the window shattered, glass raining down onto the kitchen floor. The shadow slinked through the opening, filling the room with a thick darkness. I screamed, and that stirred something inside me. As I looked toward Aunt Patricia, her face was lined with determination. "We have to face it, together," she declared. We were back to the wall, cornered by the chaos that had come inside. The darkness loomed larger, and in that moment of panic, I realized whatever it was that came in was not just a shadow. It was something seeking to connect, but at what cost? And just as abruptly as it had come, the room plunged into a blinding light. I blinked, disoriented. Then I heard laughter, soft and sinister, lingering in the air. "Are you ready to meet your legacy?" I felt my heart drop. What had I done? Chapter 5. The Legacies We Inherit. I blinked against the brightness, struggling to orient myself. The laughter faded, but the feeling of dread did not. Shadows twisted at the edges of my vision, creeping along the walls, waiting for an opportunity to come closer. "What was that?" I asked, my voice shaking. Aunt Patricia's expression was tight, her eyes darting around the room. "I don't know, but we can't let it scare us. We need to stay focused." The light around us began to dim again. The shadows whispered, like lost voices mingling in the dusk. I could feel their energy, heavy and oppressive. What did they want from me? "Maybe the locket can help," I suggested, grasping it tightly. Its warmth felt reassuring. "It showed up when all this started. Perhaps it's the key." Aunt Patricia hesitated, the flicker of fear dulling her resolve. "It's a risk, but we might not have another choice." Swallowing hard, I held the locket. Locket under the light. The engraving glinted back at me, and just for a moment the whispers quieted. "What if it can connect me to whatever is out there?" I said softly. "What if it helps us understand?" "Just be careful," Aunt Patricia warned. "Connecting with the darkness can come with consequences." I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth of the locket against my palm. "Show me," I whispered. In that instant, a jolt of energy shot through me, and I felt the world shift around us. Images flared behind my eyes, faces, places, and shadows stretching long like fingers grasping for something lost. I gasped as a figure emerged within the chaos, a woman. "Your great-grandmother," I breathed, recognizing her from an old photograph in Aunt Patricia's living room. "Yes," Aunt Patricia exclaimed, her voice tinged with urgency. She was a powerful witch, always flirting with the edge of darkness. Suddenly, the vision shifted again, revealing a scene that plunged my stomach with ice. I saw a dark figure standing over my great-grandmother, its features obscured, but radiating a sense of malevolence. "What is that?" I asked, fear tightening my throat. She called it the Shadow Man. He was always tied to our family, drawn to our gifts, Aunt Patricia replied, her voice trembling slightly. She believed he wanted to take our power for himself. The locket pulsed again, and I had another vision. My great-grandmother stood on the edge of a swirling abyss, confronting the darkness. Shadows writhed around her, hungry for more than just connection. I stumbled back, pulling Aunt Patricia with me, a visceral mixture of fear and fascination coursing through me. "What if that's what we're dealing with now?" Aunt Patricia nodded, worry creasing her brow. "We need to protect ourselves, or we may end up just like her, caught in a web of the past, unable to escape." Just then, the shadows surged forward, entering the room like a tide. Whispers grew louder, the laughter becoming a cacophony of voices. I felt myself being pulled toward them, fear gripping my heart. The locket burned hotter in my hand. I needed to act fast. And that was when I noticed a faint glow emanating from the locket's center, like a beacon against the onslaught of darkness. "It's time to make a choice," I shouted, desperation clutching my chest. Then everything went dark. Chapter 6. The Darkness Within. I gasped, snapping back into consciousness. My heart raced and my surroundings felt distorted. The shadows loomed like figures in a fog, swirling around Aunt Patricia and me. I blinked, trying to make sense of the chaos. Aunt Patricia was gripping my arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Are you okay? What did you see?" "I don't know." My voice shook. "The shadow man. He was there, and the darkness. It felt alive." Before she could respond, I noticed the locket glowing faintly, pulsing with steady light. "Look, it's still here. It must mean something," I said, my curiosity battling my fear. But the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. I felt an urge to listen, as if the shadows were trying to convey a message. "What do you want?" I shouted, frustration boiling over. The energy around us thickened, suffocating and heavy. "Stay close to the light," Aunt Patricia urged. "We have to use it to protect ourselves." I nodded, clutching the locket tighter. Maybe it can ward them off. I closed my eyes again, focusing on the glow, hoping it would guide me. Images cascaded through my mind, scenes of old rituals, my great-grandmother chanting, fire casting flickering shadows. Then I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The shadow man, lurking in the background, watching. "Wait!" I shouted, surprised by the realization. "He's been watching us! He's always been there, waiting in the dark." The realization sent chills down my spine. What if he wants to break into our world for good? What if he sees me as a way in? Aunt Patricia's face paled. "That's a terrifying thought. We can't let him have that power." As if sensing our determination, the shadows responded. They edged closer, dark tendrils stretching outwards, testing the limits of the light. I felt an icy wave wash over me, gnawing at my strength. "Focus on the light," Aunt Patricia urged. "You need to channel its energy. Remember the connection you felt. Use the locket." I took a deep breath, watching the glow intensify. I felt waves of warmth flowing through me. "Show me how to fight him," I yelled, desperation leaking into my voice. In that moment, images shifted again. Symbols, sigils, intricate patterns swirling in a dance of chaos. I recognized them from my great-grandmother's journals in Aunt Patricia's attic. I had thought they were mere relics, but now they felt like an arsenal. Suddenly, the shadows froze. The whispers paused, as if holding their breath. The shadow man, now partially visible, stared back at me, an expression of malice etched into his featureless face. I felt his presence pressing down on me like a storm cloud. "Do it," Aunt Patricia urged, her grip tightening. "Use the power within you." I recalled the symbol's meanings: protection, strength, unity. I raised the locket high, focusing on the warm energy flowing through me. "You will not win. You're not welcome here," I shouted. The darkness thrummed in response, and I could feel the push and pull of energy. But something unexpected happened. The light brightened, illuminating the room like a star. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as if in pain. But just as the shadows seemed to retreat, I heard a new sound: heavy footsteps approaching from the hallway. I turned to Aunt Patricia, fear pooling in my gut. What now? "Someone's coming," she said, her eyes wide. That's when I realized we weren't alone. The dark presence had summoned more than just whispers. Chapter 7. The Footsteps in the Dark. The footsteps grew louder, echoing through the hallway like a drumbeat. My breath hitched in surprise. My throat, and I felt the pulse of the locket quicken in my hand. Who could that be? I whispered, panic rising. Aunt Patricia's eyes darted toward the door, her expression filled with dread. "We need to hide," she said urgently. Without thinking, I scanned the room. The shadows were still swirling around us, but they were starting to thin. The light from the locket flickered as if responding to my fear. "There's no time," I shouted. "What if that person is tied to him?" Aunt Patricia's face hardened. "We have to find out who it is. Maybe they can help." Doubt flooded my mind. Could anyone really help us against the Shadow Man? Still, I followed her lead, edging toward the door. The footfalls were right outside now. "Stay close," she whispered, pulling me behind her as she opened the door just a crack. I peeked around her arm, and my heart sank. A tall figure stood in the hallway, barely illuminated by the dim light flickering from the ceiling. I couldn't make out any features, just a silhouette shrouded in shadows. It felt wrong. I felt the power in the locket surge, almost as if it recognized a threat. "Hello?" Aunt Patricia called out, her voice trembling slightly. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it seemed to linger, shifting from side to side, as if waiting for something. The oppressive silence hung between us, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, the shadows wrapping around it like a cloak. I yelped and instinctively pushed Aunt Patricia back. "Run!" I shouted. Before we could react, the figure stepped inside the room. And that's when everything changed. The light from the locket exploded, filling the entire space with a blinding glow. For a moment, time froze. The figure stumbled backward, its form flickering and distorting in the radiance. "Stop!" a voice boomed, sharp and commanding. I squinted against the brightness and caught a glimpse of a face. It was a woman, her features harsh and shadowed. "You have the locket," she said, her voice low and threatening. My mind raced. "Who are you?" I shouted, gripping the locket tightly. "What do you want?" "Release it," she commanded, and the shadows behind her writhed in agitation. "The Shadow Man is not meant to be here." "Neither are you," I spat back, realizing that the man could be her ultimate goal. But just as I thought that, the room shuddered. The shadows echoed her frustration, dragging closer to us, pulsating with rage. The air buzzed. Aunt Patricia stood beside me, her face pale but resolute. "You don't understand. He's after her, too. She's in danger." Everything spun around me, and my heart hammered. The woman's gaze flickered between us and the locket, trying to gauge her options. "You are protecting something that binds us all. It must be destroyed," she said, her voice shaking with intensity. I felt a chill run down my spine. A new realization dawned on me. The locket wasn't just a key to my family's past. It had the potential to shift the balance between worlds. "Fine," I said slowly, testing my limits. "But then you have to promise to help us stop the Shadow Man." The woman hesitated, her eyes narrowing. "That's a deal I can consider." But in that moment, I noticed the shadows closing in again. I could feel the heat of their wrath all around, and I knew it was time to act. Then everything went dark. Chapter 8. The Echoes of Agreement. I gasped as darkness enveloped us. The blinding light from the locket had vanished, leaving only the dim outline of the room. I felt Aunt Patricia's grip tighten on my arm, and I knew we were both holding our breath, waiting for whatever came next. "Where are we?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The silence was heavy, and a chill crept into the air. "It's just dark," she replied quietly. "Stay close. Whatever you do, don't let go of the locket." I tightened my fist around it, feeling the cool metal against my palm. Just then, a sound broke through the heavy stillness, the rattling of chains. Fear coursed through me, and I turned, nearly stumbling over my own feet. "Who are you?" a voice hissed from the shadows. It was different from the woman's. This voice was rougher, filled with malice. "Where is the locket?" I swallowed hard and whispered back, "What do you want with it?" There was a low, dark chuckle that echoed in the void. "It belongs to us. You're too late to protect it." A thick tension filled the air. It felt like we were surrounded. My heart raced. "Aunt Patricia, we need to do something." "Listen to me," she said, voice steady despite the fear. "This darkness is the work of the Shadow Man. He's trying to keep us trapped." "No," I cried, "we won't let him." And then, in the depths of the darkness, a flicker of light appeared. It was the locket, pulsing softly, revealing just enough of our surroundings to show that the room hadn't changed. The same thick shadows still slithered near us, but now I could see them reacting to the light. "That's it!" Aunt Patricia shouted, pointing. "Hold it higher." I raised the locket above my head. The light intensified, piercing through the dark corners like a beacon. The shadows recoiled, and for a brief moment I felt a rush of power course through me. "Show yourself," I demanded, hoping to take control. The chains rattled again, and the dark voice sneered. "You're wielding power you do not understand." "I understand more than you think," I said, fueled by a surge of bravado. "This locket is a bridge. You're the one trapped in shadows, not me." "Foolish child," the voice spat. "You will regret this." Suddenly, the floor beneath us trembled, and the shadow surged forward, thrashing wildly. Aunt Patricia was yanking at my arm, trying to pull me back. "We need to go," she yelled. "To where?" I countered. "What if those shadows are just distractions? I can't let him get the locket. We might lose everything." The swirling mass split, revealing the woman's silhouette once more. "You made a deal!" she shouted, cutting through the chaos. "You cannot turn back now." I hesitated, my mind racing. There was too much at stake. The locket felt heavier in my hand, pressing down with the weight of my decision. "Then show us the way to stop him!" I cried out. In that heartbeat, the shadows hesitated. A voice, softer now, emerged from the dark. "Trust me, and I will guide you." Hope flickered within me, but doubt clung just as tightly. I needed to decide. That's when the shadows lunged again. "Do it now!" the voice boomed, and in a flash I felt the pulse of the locket explode with energy, lighting up the room and pushing back against the encroaching dark. But as the light fought against the shadows, I realized I was never going to escape this nightmare without taking a risk. "Okay," I yelled, my voice steady. "I trust you." That's when the ground shook once more, and I felt the world tipping. Whatever came next, I knew I was in deeper than ever before. Chapter 9. The Shattered Veil. The light from the locket exploded, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I felt a rush of heat and cold, as if the air twisted into something frenzied. Aunt Patricia's fingers dug into my arm, her voice rising over the chaos. "Hold it steady!" I tried to keep the locket high, but cracks began to appear on the ground beneath us. It was as if the very fabric of this dark space was fraying. Then I made a terrible mistake. I looked directly into the shadows creeping toward us. Faces emerged from within them, twisted, hollow eyes, and mouths contorted in eternal screams. I stumbled back, losing focus on the light. The shadows surged again, wrapping around me like coiling snakes. "Aunt Patricia!" I gasped, panic prickling at my skin. "Stay close!" she shouted, but the shadows were relentless, pushing her back. I felt the locket slipping from my fingers. "No!" I cried out, clutching it desperately as my heart pounding in my chest. "Let it go," the dark voice sneered. "It does not belong to you. You've made your choice, child." In that moment, I remembered the container of emotions inside me, fear, anger, and the resolve to fight back. No, I won't let you take it, I shouted, striking the locket against the floor with all my strength. There was a shattering sound, sharper than glass breaking. The air seemed to vibrate with energy, and a shock wave spread from the impact. The shadows recoiled, hissing in fury. I didn't care if the locket broke. I just wanted the darkness to stop. Suddenly, the room shifted. Colors burst forth, bright and alive, washing away the oppressive shadows. The faces that had haunted me faded away, but in their place a swirling mist took shape, forming a new figure. It was the woman again, her essence shimmering as if woven from the very fabric of light. "You've done well," she said, "but we are not free yet." "What do we do?" I asked, breathless. She raised her hand, and a new warmth enveloped us. "You must face him," she declared. "The Shadow Man will not allow us to escape without a challenge." "Challenge? What do you mean?" I stammered. "I can't fight." "You have power," she replied, "but you must believe in it. To defeat him, you need to summon your strength. You wield the light, and it flows through the locket. Let it guide you." Just as I began to comprehend her words, the ground trembled again, and the darkness rolled back, revealing a pathway. It pulsed ominously, lined with flickering shadows that feasted on doubt. Aunt Patricia grabbed my shoulder. "We can't turn back. We have to go forward." "Together," I said, looking into her eyes. I felt a spark of confidence blend with fear. It was a small victory, but it was enough to push me ahead. As we stepped toward the path, I caught a glint of silver in the corner of my eye. It was another locket, identical to mine, but the shadows danced around it, desperate to keep it hidden. "That must be the one they want," I shouted, pointing to it. Then, without warning, a figure loomed behind us. The Shadow Man stood tall, cloaked in swirling darkness, his eyes piercing through the light. "You think you can take what belongs to me," he growled. Time froze. The air grew thick with expectation, and I realized what was at stake. I took a deep breath, heart racing. This was my moment to change everything. As he lunged toward us, I grasped my locket tighter. This was not just a battle for light and dark, it was a fight for freedom. I prepared myself, focused on the beat of my heart and the warmth radiating from the locket. The darkness surged toward us, a living entity intent on reclaiming what it believed to be its own. "You'll never take me! This ends now!" I shouted, a fierce conviction igniting within me. With that, I raised the glowing locket high, channeling every ounce of energy I had in the past few days. Light erupted from it, bathing the shadowy figure in radiance. "Foolish girl," he bellowed, his voice a thunderous echo. "You cannot hold the light against the depths of fear." Yet I could see his confidence waver. He was not just a mere shadow. He was a manifestation of all the fear, pain, and darkness my family had struggled against for generations. "Patricia!" I yelled, feeling the urgency rise within me. "We have to face him."
"Together," Aunt Patricia nodded, her eyes steady and resolute. "We share this legacy. Together we can push him back. Remember our strength." In that moment, I could feel the bonds of our family history weaving around us, a lineage of resilience rooted in the soil of this cursed land. The shadows hissed, attempting to suffocate our resolve, but they found it impossible to penetrate the strength we drew from our shared bloodline. "Let's finish this!" I cried, both terrified and emboldened. We surged forward, holding the locket with both hands, feeling it pulse and thrum as our united voices surged into one. "You have no power here. This is our home." The shadows writhed and shrieked, caught between our determination and the brightness of the locket. The darkness thinned, revealing flashes of long-buried memories, faces of those who had come before us, lost souls yearning for release. But there was still a nagging doubt at the back of my mind. As we pressed on, a deep part of me wondered if this was enough. Would the shadows simply reform once we closed the rift, or had we truly severed its hold on our family? "Keep pushing," Aunt Patricia urged, sensing my faltering resolve. And so we pushed, light battling dark, fear against hope. I felt the air shift, as if something was breaking. With one final burst, our combined voices pierced the air. Boxes of whispers erupted into screams, and the Shadow Man trembled before the onslaught. In an instant, the darkness imploded, collapsing in on itself like a dying star. With a final deafening roar, it shattered, sending shockwaves of energy surging through the room. Then, silence. A heavy stillness enveloped us. My heart raced as I opened my eyes, staring into shimmering lights that gradually faded into the familiar surroundings of the farmhouse living room. Did we do it?" I stammered, releasing a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Aunt Patricia looked around, her expression a mixture of disbelief and relief. "It appears, for now, yes, but the shadows are persistent." She paused. "It may not be over completely." I shivered, glancing toward the window. Outside, moonlight illuminated the fields as if nothing had ever changed. Yet deep inside me, a hollow weight remained. Sometimes I wonder if the Shadow Man is truly gone. After all, darkness does not vanish. It simply waits for a moment of weakness. Aunt Patricia encouraged me not to dwell too long in fear. She said we could move on, create new memories, rebuild as a family. Still, something keeps gnawing at the back of my mind. The locket, even now cradled in my palm, felt different, warmer even, as though it had absorbed the essence of the conflict. Months later, in a new city, I glance at that locket from time to time. It reminds me of the summer at Aunt Patricia's, an unshakable tension between light and dark, safety and danger. Somehow, I think I'll always carry a piece of that darkness with
Me, a constant reminder that the shadows of our past can never be fully erased, only confronted.